Trump just announced that the US and China struck a deal to keep TikTok alive in America and under US controlled ownership. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent called it a framework deal, which means there's a lot more details that need to come out in order to finalize this deal. The deal is expected to close in the next 30 to 45 days. So this is very, very quick. It needs to be endorsed by Congress potentially. And there are so much more questions than answers at this point. So let's dive in. So this is an article from Bloomberg here about the TikTok deal. Doesn't seem to do what it's supposed to do. It has now been 512 days since Congress passed a law to ban the app unless its Chinese owners, ByteDance, divested. 244 days ago, since the Supreme Court affirmed the law that it was constitutional. And most importantly, 241 days since President Donald Trump decided to ignore all of that. And in his own words, just because he liked the app and thinks it helped him win the election. Given what we know so far, it's a bum deal for TikTok's user in the US that falls short of addressing the national security claims that got us into this in the first place. The black box for the all-important algorithm remains sealed and with China. According to multiple reports, so the deal now will create a TikTok America, TikTok US entity that will be majority owned by US. 80.1% will be owned by US investors, including Oracle, Silver Lake, Andreessen Horowitz, and some other ones that I don't know their names. ByteDance will keep about 20%, 19.9%. This is what I heard from Reuters, about 19% of the ownership, and that was below the threshold that was outlined by the law. ByteDance will retain ownership of the algorithm. So ByteDance is still going to own the ownership of the algorithm, but it will be, from what I understand, is going to be a separate algorithm that will run for the US compared to the global TikTok. So it will be licensed to its new owners. Now, there's a lot of questions around this. Like, how is that going to work? Like, if you're just thinking as a user, TikTok users, how will the videos on TikTok America appear to the outside of the United States, to the rest of the world? What happens to videos that are from outside the US? Are we going to be able to see them in the US? Will there be some kind of censure? Will there be some kind of monitoring between these the TikTok US and the TikTok Global? What value will TikTok Global have if users in the UK can't comment or subscribe to the latest post from America's viral stars? There's also a lot of TikTok American influencers that are generating a lot of money, a lot of deals from outside the US. How will that affect? Are they still going to be able to sell their products and services to the rest of the world? How is that going to work? How will the data on all these users remain siloed as promised? So that we have a pretty good idea, we think, but it remains to be seen. There's a lot of details, again, that we will see. So these are the big engineering and legal problems and trade-offs that needs to be solved. Which is why we need 30 to 45 days to firm that all up and make sure that we can actually execute on that deal. The political problem has not really gone away, though. With China retaining control of the algorithm, it's hard to argue that TikTok is no longer being controlled by a foreign adversary as the law demands. China seems to have successfully held firm on its red line of not giving up its secret sauce. Chairman of the House Select Committee on China, John Moolenaar of Michigan, said on X that he was worried about the deal as it may involve ongoing reliance by the new TikTok, the TikTok US, on a ByteDance algorithm application that could allow continued Chinese control and influence. So that's all nice to say this. A lot of the Republicans in Congress are very bold in their statement initially, but when it comes down to it, they're not enforcing anything, and they really follow whatever the U.S. president is telling them to do. So it's going to really remain to be seen if Republican Congress is actually going to feel that strongly as things are going to happen, move forward, and if they're going to be willing to push back on president, which is unlikely. The investor group gets a slice of the nation's hottest application. They get to use the algorithm. This is also something that's very important because they haven't been able to really replicate that engine, and buying TikTok without that engine is kind of useless. So what does that do? So we talked about in summary, the ByteDance is going to spin off TikTok US operations. It's going to be majority owned by the US, by US investors. We talked about Oracle, Silver Lake, Andreessen, Horowitz, and others that are going to be going into that. ByteDance will remain owner at 19.9%. The board will be mainly US dominated, but there will also be one seat that's going to be for the US government, which is, I don't know, it could be worrisome a little bit if they're going to try to dictate how the data and censor some people that are critical of the government. But we're seeing what we're seeing with the freedom of expression in this country. It wouldn't be surprising if the US government was trying to get control of the content of TikTok US and basically ban some topics that are critical of the US government, of Donald Trump. The US user data will be stored at Oracle in Texas. The Oracle is a big part of the infrastructure there. So that way all the US data is going to be in the US. How the videos and the content is going to be published to other countries? Will we have to sign some kind of agreement? Will we need to have some form of approval from the government to basically publish on the global TikTok platform? This is unknown. Or are they going to be completely separate application? It says that the US users will be asked to migrate to a version of the app that's built specifically for the US users. And it's also going to be connected to its separate algorithm. So it's not going to be one common algorithm that's going to be used globally in the US. It's going to be, so basically the recommendation rules and all of that, the recommendation algorithm is going to be separate from the US and from the rest of the world. The US is going to be its old silo. We have to decide, but we have to still determine how that's going to be shared with the rest of the world. There's still a lot of things, a lot of debates about how independent is the algorithm. Can China actually continue to tweak the U.S. algorithm, change what's being seen by U.S. citizens and U.S. users? How secure is that going to be? Legal and security compliance. So the U.S. law passed in 2024 requires divestiture of ByteDance, citing data security and national security. So even now that we're changing the ownership of the application to be less than 20% for the US TikTok application, if the algorithm is still owned by ByteDance and controlled by ByteDance, then is it still violates the spirit of the law if ByteDance and the Chinese government are able to impact the US algorithm and present topics, etc., that are trying to control the sentiment in the US. Then we have enforcement oversight. So who's going to enforce the algorithm, what's being done, etc. So US regulator will need to get transparency on what the algorithm is doing. Are we going to be able to do that? That's uncertain. And then we have the whole user experience and the migration. Users will need to migrate to the US app. It's going to be in a different algorithm. So I suspect that the new algorithm, the recommendation algorithm, will not work as well as the global algorithm because it's probably going to lack some of the experience. I mean, I don't know how the recommendation algorithm works for TikTok, But if it's some kind of AI engine or something like that, when we transfer that information into a new server, it may not be work as well as anticipated, and it may have some problems, some basic problems about the TikTok application itself. Then there's all the influencers that are generating a lot of their income from TikTok globally. Now will be in a silo. Are they going to be able to generate revenue from outside the US? Or are they going to be constrained to the US? Are they going to have to create two separate accounts, duplicate the content? Are you going to be allowed to have a TikTok global account? Are we going to be forced to use the TikTok US, or can we choose whether we choose the TikTok US or the TikTok global? There's lots of questions, way more questions than answered, and we have a very short period of time to get this done. If you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe to my channel, not to miss the updates on the TikTok deal, but also I'm following all kinds of other news that affects your financial future. So make sure you follow, and see you next time.